I haven't. Sorry. Oh, no. Don't worry.
Recording in progress.
Okay, now we're ready to start. Jill, will you take roll, please?
Certainly. Member Sang,
Present.
Member Kreuzberg,
Here.
Member Cole,
Present.
Vice Chair Boyle.
Here.
And Chair Jones.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment that is not on, for items not on the agenda? It doesn't look like it. Very good. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting of May 20th, 2026?
So moved. Second.
So ordered. On the consent calendar, we have items 4 through 8. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar in a sweep motion?
So moved. Second.
So ordered. Now it's time for the CalPERS hearing for the Industrial Disability Retirement hearing for Vito Gaxiola, police officer. The board received the disability hearing option form signed by the applicant requesting the retirement board close the hearing to the general public, including the discussion of the medical report submitted in consideration of the retirement board's determination. Therefore, this is closed to the public, so if you're not involved in this particular hearing, please step outside and we'll notify you when it's good to come back in.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I think we're ready to go now. Is there a motion then to determine that Vito Gaxiola, who has filed the CalPERS Industrial Disability Retirement Application, is substantially incapacitated within the meaning of the Public Employees Retirement Law from the performance of his usual duties in the position of police officer, with a retirement date of September 19th, 2025, and that such disability is a result of injury or disease arising in the course of his employment as a local safety member, and to instruct the system's attorney and the secretary to prepare the necessary documentation of this board's determination and forward same to CalPERS.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye. Aye. Mr. Cole? Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. And just like that, the hearing is over. Mr. Schrieger, Officer Gaxiola. Vito, thank you very, very much for your more than 2 decades of service to the city. At the police department, it's not an easy job, and you and I worked together for a period of that time. Very enjoyable. We always allow and invite, but no pressure here. If there's anything you'd like to say, you're more than welcome to say it. And if you'd just like to say thanks and scoot on out of here, that's fine too.
I would like to say a few words.
Please.
Thank you. Being a police officer is one of the coolest jobs ever. It really is. And being a police officer in a city like this one here, that's deep in positive tradition and history, it's even better. I mean, along the way, things happen, you get hurt. It's part of the job. But if I had a chance to do it all over again, I would so do it again. Thank you very much, board. Thank you, Lieutenant Jones. That's it.
Thank you, Vito. Very well said. Oh. Okay, we have to close this hearing again. You let me know when, Lindsay. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so we are back open. Is there a motion then to determine that Ross Wilson, who has filed a CalPERS industrial disability retirement application, is substantially incapacitated within the meaning of the Public Employees Retirement Law from the performance of his usual duties in the position of firefighter paramedic, with a retirement date of September 26, 2022, and that such disability is a result of injury or disease arising in the course of his employment as a local safety member, and to instruct the system's attorney and the secretary to prepare the necessary documentation of this board's determination and forward same to CalPERS.
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you very much for your years of service. I'm sorry that your career had to end the way it did. I'm sure it wasn't your preferred manner. As we do with all of our employees that have had a great career with the city of Pasadena, you are welcome to make any statement that you like, and you're also welcome to say, thanks a lot, adios, I'm heading back to Arizona.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
it's up to you. If you'd like to say anything, now would be the opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to thank the city and everyone involved in, the short ending to my career, but I wasn't here. I'd spent about half my career here in Pasadena, and I've got to say it was one of the best experiences of my life as far as the fireman aspect goes. It was great to move to a bigger city with so much history and so much prestige, and I just really had a good time. I'm sad that it was cut short, but I appreciate my time here, and thank you.
And thank you. Thank you. Good day. Mr. Howard, good day. Thank you. Ms. Yates, thank you. Yeah, these are going to be fast. Okay, I think 11 and 12 will be fast. Heck it. We'll skip to 13. We've got people waiting. We've got people waiting, and I appreciate you coming in. So item 13 is to review, discuss, and provide direction on the preliminary comparative ESG portfolio evaluation. And we had a subcommittee on this, Mr. Cole and Peter. So if you guys would like to start us off, either one of you.
Sure. I think Jill and her agenda report are pretty comprehensive. If everybody remembers sort of the history of why we got to where we did, we've heard fairly passion pleas to divest in 3 different names as a result of the conflict in Gaza and other things. This board decided that we did not want to go down the route of individual divestment because today's issues, tomorrow's may be different. But we entertained the idea of maybe providing sort of an opportunity to do an ESG overlay so that we're thinking more broadly in that same context. And so we asked Jill and the Cerity team to give us an evaluation that allows us to sort of think about what alternative approaches we could have to managing the system's assets. And so as a result, that's the result of the report you have in front of you. So, Rick, anything to add?
I would simply add this, that the report, which I appreciate, lays out a picture that on the surface appears to pour cold water on the idea that we would be upholding our fiduciary responsibilities if we were to move to an ESG strategy for all of our investments. And different studies, different time periods, different methodologies for doing those might come up with different conclusions, but I think it's a credible report. Looking below the surface, it's not quite so clear. In fact, ESG investments in the last couple of years have outperformed the baseline case. So when you pick particular years or particular ways of measuring, you can come to different conclusions. I would make 2 points. The first is that our fiduciary responsibilities are ones that we are legally obligated to, and each of us personally take very seriously. But this money doesn't belong to the recipients of the benefits. This is a public entity. Our obligations to the recipients of our promises is unshakable. We have a duty to fully honor those commitments, and we will. The city is legally committed to stand behind this fund to ensure that every penny owed to every firefighter, police officer, and their beneficiaries is paid, and paid in full. But that raises the question of a broader sense of fiduciary responsibility. What is our fiduciary responsibility to the public? And the City Council has voted and asked us, although not apparently officially in writing yet, to guide our investments with a moral compass. And I think each of us has a moral compass. We may feel that those are personal moral values and not appropriate to bring into the public arena, and I respect that. But I bring a personal moral compass into the decisions because I'm a public official, elected by the people to represent them. And I do not believe that untrammeled, as my colleague Jason Lyon said on Monday evening, rapacious, conscienceless capitalism is consistent with the public's view of how its money ought to be invested. Capitalism has brought extraordinary benefits to a broad range of people in our country and across the world. But consistently over the last 200 years, the public has stepped in to restrain untrammeled capitalism. Untrammeled capitalism has allowed child labor. Untrammeled capitalism has allowed grotesque injuries and grotesque working conditions, long hours for less than sustainable pay. And so the public has consistently stepped in to make judgments and not just simply say that we ought to squeeze every last penny out of the workers, every last penny out of products that are noxious, dangerous, and deadly, every last penny out of environmental degradation and damage. And I think we ought to be guided by similar. So here's my practical suggestion, and it's simply a suggestion for discussion because each of you will weigh this issue differently. I think the next time we examine our portfolio balancing, we ought to consider an ESG pilot. Divesting all of the mutual funds we invested in now in order to comply with the city's guidelines I don't think would gather support around this dais. And I think for good reason. I would understand why you would be highly hesitant to do that based upon our overall fiduciary responsibility. But I think that we ought to be open to considering an ESG element to our investments and to see how those perform in real life, not in projections or studies that by their nature are subjective. So that is my suggestion. We're going to hear from the public. I'm going to hear from my colleagues, and we'll see how we proceed.
Thank you. Anything else to add to that, Peter?
Not at this point.
Okay. Annie, Claudia, we'll turn it over to you. Is there anything you'd like to present to us?
I do have the analysis in there. If you want me to review it, I can, but I guess the one point I would just make is, as we saw in previous presentations and in this data, analysis. The current managers actually have a relatively strong ESG rating. Most of them are single A's, which is, kind of in the average, but the range is pretty broad. So I would put out that all of your managers are currently considering some ESG factors as they're putting their portfolios together in different ways. So I don't think that you would be transitioning a portfolio from, the capitalistic villains, if you want to put it that way, into ESG heroes. I think in today's environment, every portfolio manager has to consider some kind of ESG factors because it does make an impact on profits and profitability of companies.
Mr. Chairman, may I briefly respond?
Yes, please.
I appreciate those sentiments. Ironically, I think that strengthens my case. If we are already considering at some level, even though we didn't know it, ESG considerations, to take those up one more level, for this board to actually take that into consideration when we rebalance our portfolio, I think is consistent with the procedures that apparently already are part of our investment strategy.
Thank you.
I guess I will, I did make a comment. Rick, your comment about the city's going to make these obligations. Keith and I are long enough on this board to remember the time the city and this board almost came to court because the city wanted us to believe they were good for it. And the board and the beneficiaries looked at how underfunded we were and said, maybe not. We'd be happier with us having the money rather than worrying about what's going to happen to the city. In a time when the city council is talking about where to come up with more revenue, more to come up to do reasonably good things for the city, I'm not here. I'd rather be 100% funded so that we don't have to look to the city. And to me, that means I'd rather have, and we've agreed to run underfunded, so it was sort of our compromise. But I think, like it or not, performance is going to be important in a time when the city's resources are going to be more constrained than they have in prior times.
I don't disagree with any of your comments. It's obviously better to have a 100% funded program than one that is less than 100%, although 100% is based upon actuarial studies. It's based upon assumptions about future performance and inflation. So 100% is a fictional number.
Fair.
Again, where legal blows might come into play, we really are legally bound to honor our obligations. The court, the California rule is based upon the court's ruling on that in Pasadena. And so not just for past earned benefits, but for, in that case, future earned benefits based upon promises made in the past. So I think it's black letter law, and I understand the higher level of comfort, but black letter law, at least under previous Supreme Courts, has tended to be something you could rely upon.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, let's get into public comment. Starting off, Mr. Randall Hine Lamb. Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, sir. Welcome back.
Good morning. Randall Hine Lamb, a resident of District 5 here in Pasadena, retired with a nearly 40-year history of public service in healthcare as a registered nurse. I urge this board to strongly consider and support the resolution or the proposal to add this ESG or strengthen the ESG guidelines that you use in your investing. From personal experience, my wife and I have made the decision some 20 years ago to leave the financial advisors that we had and to switch to a financial advisor who was able to access funds that were much more in line with our values. I would, I thank Councilman Cole for his comments, and I would strongly support them. I think one of the things that comes up is that idea that you have to, as you put it, squeeze every penny or wring every drop of financial good from a particular investment in order to do so, that is a misunderstanding of what it means to have a fiduciary, to be responsible for the fiduciary interests of your clients. I, for one, would not want my advisor, who I think you'll hear from here in a few minutes, to be investing in things where I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. That is in my best interest, to be able to get some extra sleep. And knowing that my investments reflect in a stronger way what my concerns are is especially important to me. I just wanted also to say, you are responsible here for people who have, like me, given their lives in service to the community. And I think that one of the things that we forget is that actions being taken in our name and by our complicity are killing healthcare providers, first responders, police in places like Gaza and Lebanon. And these are not people necessarily affiliated with Hamas and Hezbollah. These are the people who enforce the day-to-day laws, the safety things, and who respond to needs. Especially this past week, you may have heard of the situation with Dr. Abu Safia, a physician who is the head of the Adnan Kamal Hospital until about 570 days ago, when he was taken into Israeli prison. And his life is in danger at this point. I know that many people, including Amnesty International, are actively campaigning on his behalf. And I would urge you to consider your actions here to strengthen ESG as part of that effort to get him released. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mike Poles, to be followed by Terry Stein.
Hello,
Good morning.
I'm Mike Poles. I have been a wealth manager here in Pasadena for over 20 years. A large portion of our firm's clients invest their wealth using environmental, social, and governance factors in their investment plans. They feel it essential to use their values as well as empirical data to help guide their family's investment decisions. They are not alone. According to US SIF, in the United States, approximately $6.6 trillion is invested using environmental, social, and governance factors. This managed money accounts for roughly 11% of the total $61.7 trillion professionally managed in this country. As a wealth management and financial planning firm, we use ESG factors as another critical form of analysis when building portfolios that meet our clients' needs. I urge the Fire and Police Retirement System Board to adopt ESG factors in managing all its investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Terry Stein. Good morning and welcome back.
Good morning. Thanks for the air conditioning. It's
Yeah.
lovely to be here. Obviously, I'm here to speak in favor of strengthening the ESG guidelines. As a lawyer, I take your fiduciary duties extremely seriously and would never encourage you to do anything that would violate the letter of the law. And I also believe that your fiduciary responsibilities, as Member Cole pointed out, extend to the city and do not require you to, I believe the phrase was, wring every last cent out of your investments. The pensioners at issue here are people who have given their lives to public service for decades in the bravest and most honorable of ways. And the way in which we care for them is not simply to wring every last dollar, but to make sure that we care for them the way we as a community wish to reflect our values. I know when, during the fires, I brought food, as Jewish mother, that's what I do, to a lot of the firefighters who were camped out at the Rose Bowl. And I was amazed by the fact that there were firefighters who were there from Arizona, there were firefighters who were there from Nevada, there were firefighters from Tahoe, from all over California. It was so moving and inspirational, and, thanking each and every one of them. And every one of them was like, we're a family. It doesn't matter if we're in the same station, we're part of a brotherhood. And I believe that same ethos applies to first responders all over the world. I don't think that brotherhood knows borders. Certainly the people who I spoke with, who came and heroically put their lives on the line to fight our fires, didn't believe that there were borders. When we talk about strengthening ESG guidelines, which boards and cities and nations with budgets much, much larger and portfolios far more complex to manage, put their investments towards an ESG policy, they're making a conscious choice that reflects that organizations that harm first responders, that companies that harm first responders, are not places in which we want to put our money. And that there are ways in which one, as a pension board, as a city, as a county, as a nation, can uphold these solemn obligations in ways that don't conflict with our community values and instead honor those values. So I would encourage you to look for a way in which to make this work, to try it out. I think Member Cole's
I have to ask you to start wrapping up.
I'm wrapping up, sorry, I can't see over here.
Okay.
Of a pilot program is very sensible. See how it goes, keep revisiting, be flexible. Look for a way to say yes rather than look for a way to say no. Thank you for the extra time, appreciate you.
You're welcome, thank you. Eli Grossman? And we have one more public speaker after this. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Eli Grossman. I'm a lifelong Pasadena area resident, proud American Jew, and former federal wildland firefighter. I had the privilege of addressing this board a few meetings ago, where I advocate for my belief that the humanitarian ethics that animate all good public safety and fire work should also be reflected in the FPRS's investment policies. I think this is particularly true in a time when we can't trust our federal government to hold our military allies and companies listed on the U.S. Stock Exchange accountable for committing crimes against humanity, such as Israel's intentional targeting and murder of first responders in Gaza. Thank you for continuing to consider this resolution and to hear us today to continue to speak in favor of adopting an ESG policy. I want to focus the rest of my comment today on the logistical aspects of what adopting a human rights explicit investment policy would look like. I want to stress my appreciation for the importance of meeting the financial needs of FPRS's beneficiaries. When I was on the fire line back in 2024 on the coffee pot fire, it was Pasadena fire medics, line medics, who were watching over us on our division and were hauling 60 plus pounds of medical gear every day up thousands of feet of elevation to make sure that we were safe and had the gear we needed to do our job. And I understand that this is hard work and that it takes a toll on your body, especially if you're a career firefighter. And so it's particularly important to me that these folks enjoy a comfortable and financially secure retirement. And I believe that adopting this ethical financial policy for the FPRS will only further this goal. Contributing to social harm like war crimes if you're a company is a liability, even if that political instability associated with that bad behavior doesn't immediately show up in an immediate stock price. Just ask 1960 South Africa, which the FPRS wisely decided to divest from. Moreover, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't believe fiduciary duty means that you have to check your ethical common sense at the door. It just means that you can't use your position to enrich yourself or your associates at the expense of your beneficiaries. In the case of investing or choosing managers, you probably already have these moral gut checks when you know it's a no-go. And I think that what's really, and it sounds like already that the day-to-day working of these funds means that some of these managers already have ESG. So you're already implicitly making these decisions, these moral decisions, right, when you're doing your jobs as fiduciaries. But in this moment, it's important to publicly acknowledge that these gut checks that you already are doing means avoiding companies that are complicit in genocide and managers that invest in those companies. Thank you again for your time and consideration, and particularly thank you to Councilmember Cole for his eloquent statement in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we started with Mr. Heinlam, and we will finish with Mrs. Heinlam. Save the best for last. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Doni Heinlam. I'm a resident of District 5 here in Pasadena, and I have just lost my comments. I am so sorry. There we go. I am reading comments today from one of our colleagues, Brian Beery, who many of you may know, very active in the city in many different ways over the last 25 years. And he has written this letter to the FPRS board. Thank you for once again taking up the issue of revising your ethical investment policy. My apologies for not being present today, as unfortunately I am battling an illness. My sincere recommendation is that you adopt the City of Pasadena's ethical investment policy that was recently approved by the City Council to guide the way that you manage your funds portfolio. The reason for this recommendation is due to the fact that for over 25 years, I've worked closely with both the PPD and PFD staff, so I know the character and ethics of these fine public servants. Currently, I have a business partnership with former Deputy Police Chief Daryl Qualls and former PPD investigator Keith Roberts, who is now head of security for the Norton Simon Museum. I've spent countless hours talking to them about ethical policing, Daryl teaching that topic at the Post Center at CSLB, and they would absolutely want their money to be invested in ways that did not bring harm to others. In addition, my work with the Flint Ridge Center and Neighborhood Connections placed me alongside John Perez, Jason Clausen, Art Shute, Bill Grisafe, Cheryl Moody, Mark Lang, Pete Hedema, Mario Ortiz, and dozens of others of Pasadena's finest. I believe that they would also concur and support an ethical investment policy similar to the City of Pasadena's. Currently, I am working with Daryl and Keith to provide work-based learning opportunities for PUSD students. In that role, we collaborate with the PFD regularly, so I'm in close contact with Chief Chad Augustine, Captain Christian Miller, and Captain Victor Lazarian, among others. Their work to support PUSD students is outstanding and shows their values and commitment to our community. I also believe that they would support an update to your ethical investment policy. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to hearing the results of your deliberations from my colleagues. Respectfully, Brian Beery, Pasadena, California. And I would wholeheartedly concur with the rest of those who have spoken in favor of looking at an ESG policy in more depth. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We have somebody that's on their way. Is it possible if she gets here, she can also speak?
Well, normally I think the answer would be no, but I'm more than happy. If we're still discussing this
Okay.
topic, then I'd be more than happy to let her step in.
Okay, she's a financial advisor, so she understands these things. Thank you.
All right. So, to the board, discussion? Comments, questions?
So do we have a proposal that we're voting on today? Is there just information gathering? Where are we going from here on this subject today?
I think in the absence of official notification from the city, consideration of their request is premature. What I'm suggesting is we have an openness to a continuing discussion about ESG principles as we move forward with our investment decisions in the future. So I don't think it's time. And if we think, well, we can just dispose of this, the report says, it's not always the most prudent investment, so let's just make this issue go away. I don't think the issue goes away. And so I think the best thing to do is to await the letter. I'll nudge the mayor to do his job and and put the letter into writing, and then we can consider it. But I'm suggesting today that we keep an open mind about ESG principles, since apparently they already play some role in our investments.
I would disagree with that. Maybe not surprising, I don't know. You know, the city made their commitment not to invest in these types of things, which is a very easy commitment to make when you don't have investments in these types of things. The city doesn't invest in any stocks, anything like that. They're not allowed to do that. So for them to take that position, saying, yeah, okay, that's a good idea, we're not going to invest in that, that's very easy to do. Okay, that's like me saying I'm not going to kill puppies. I mean, it doesn't mean much to me. And the fact that the city has had, what, 2 months to deliver this letter to us at your request? I mean, you requested that it happen, and it hasn't happened. So I don't know what the thinking is behind that. But I would not like to keep this an open topic for future discussion. I know that it's contrary to what you say, but I think I owe it an explanation to the people that have come down here, because you are very committed to your cause, and I applaud that. You've been extremely gracious to deal with, you and the many other people that have come down time and time again for public comment. And so I think I owe an explanation as to where at least I'm coming from. And that is that today's conversation, or what started this conversation, had to do with weapons, tobacco, fossil fuels, private prisons. But Peter has said before that there's a slippery slope here, because if we took a position on that, tomorrow it could be AI data centers, semiconductor manufacturers, mining companies, pharmaceutical companies. The list could go on. And it may not be, you know, you folks, it may be a completely different group of folks that come in and do this. And, you know, every cause can be sincerely held. I mean, you are good people with good beliefs, and you're trying to make the world a better place. I get that. But a pension board cannot become the forum for deciding which lawful industries are morally acceptable. Our duty is not to express our personal values through the portfolio. Our duty is to safeguard the retirement security of the members and beneficiaries who rely upon us. And to me, that means that when our financial advisors come to us with recommendations of what companies we should invest in, or what ETFs or mutual funds that we should invest in, we have to put, for me, I put my personal values aside, okay? I am here for the beneficiaries of our system. And whatever makes the most money from a lawful, you know, company is what's most important to me, under our guidelines. I mean, we have certain restrictions on our guidelines. We can't invest in something that's very speculative or something like that, because we have to make our money last. So, I mean, that's just why I feel this way. I can't speak for the board. I know Mr. Cole had, you know, I think I know how you feel. I don't know if anybody else would like to say anything.
So, yeah, I didn't know we were going to kind of get this deep, but today, so, you know, from Cerity, we hire you to do something for us, or we invest in your services, I should say, to do something for us. We ask that you guide us. We ask that you keep our finances fiduciary responsible, you know, for the people we serve. Again, I echo what Keith says. It's very admirable the amount of time and energy that each one of you spend to make the world a better place, and I admire that. I admire that very much. But I also take my duties here. I've had I'm the third family member that has sat on this board to make sure that our first responders, of which my family members are currently, directly and indirect family members do. So there's no one here that wants safety for first responders throughout the world. You know, we just sent a team to Venezuela, I believe it is. So we're still outreaching to everywhere in the world. I'm sorry to be on this high horse, but it's in what we're doing in some cases from where I sit. We ask you to do a job, and then we come back, and it's like going to the doctor says, well, this is what I think's wrong, this is what I think you should take, and I go, well, I don't think that's what's wrong, I don't think that's the medicine I should take, and then the doctor looks at me and says, well, then why did you come see me? Kind of a different point. And I wrote down a lot during the public comment here. I will try and make this brief. I believe at the time, our investment advisors, at the time these investments were made, this board dealt with the information they had available to them, and I believe our investment partners dealt with the information they had available. And they said, hey, here's a plan. Now, we or the individuals at the time authorized the plan. We fast forward to today, and they say, hey, you have a good financial plan, but it's got a lot of political ramifications to it, and you have to understand that, and we do. So that's one thing. I think if we all had this same information today that you've all brought to us, we may or may not make that decision. One of the public speakers said, we already have a social responsibility as individuals, and I agree with you. I really do. And I think that will help guide us. I think, as Keith said, I do not bring my personal beliefs here, and I will not. But I am aware in the future that we have all these issues. Then I go back to Peter's comment of, we are now in a conflict that we were not in when all this started. I remember when this came to us about the second meeting, I said, this is not going to go away. So to your point, Mr. Cole, I totally agree with you. And I think I was one of the ones that said, hey, we got to look at this. We got to talk about it. We got to deal with it. How long we talk about it, how we deal with it, how long it goes on is another question. But I firmly believe it's not going away. But when we look at this direct conflict that the United States is in now, like I think of all the anti-missile hardware we're using and everything, who's making the chips for that? Who's, providing the actual explosive? Who's the labor that's actually putting this all together with our private contractors? Like, how do we know, even if we were to accept this, and I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap this up and make it quick, every conflict we have gets us back into this realm again. Oh, somebody's providing tobacco to the workers that are making the chips. We don't want to invest in that either. So it is a very slippery slope, and I'm troubled with that because I don't know what the end game is. Also, we're in a fund that does have an end game, thank God. The city does not. It goes on forever. PERS goes on forever, we sure hope. But this fund, we're in it for a short period of time with a small amount of money compared to what they deal with normally. So, here I am being the politician and kind of agreeing with everybody. Then you go back to Keith and say, yeah, I have a responsibility to do that. Do we want to be 100% funded? Yes. Knowing what we know today, I think we will be more careful going forward for responsible investment, whether we have an ESG or not. And I think we have to look at our partners in our investment groups and say, what do you think? And I think as we go forward, we do have to be cognizant of the decisions we make. First and foremost, for me personally, financially, and that will, just for me, take precedence. And then we have to do the best job we can to be socially and morally ethic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our other speaker just arrived. Would this be a good time for her to come up?
Why not?
I do have.
Okay, Roger. Hi, welcome. Can you please state your name for us?
Yes, my name is Selma Czar, and I'll just give you a briefing on my background real quick so they can understand the context in which some of the comments I'll make. So I'm a Pasadena resident. I live in Bungalow Heaven, and I am a financial advisor at UBS Wealth Management. Prior to being a financial advisor, I was the market director for UBS Los Angeles area, downtown LA, Burbank, and Pasadena presence. UBS is the largest global wealth manager in the world and the 5th largest in the United States. 1 in every 2 billionaires has an asset allocation with UBS. My background is that I went to Wharton MBA, and prior to that, I was electrical engineering major at Carnegie Mellon University. So my analytics hold hopefully some weight with my background in my education and my work experience. And what we have seen historically, consistently, that participating in an ESG portfolio is in line with participating with the S&P market. So what we have seen that there is no analytical differential between participating in the market or participating in a morally correct portfolio. And that's why we've seen a trend. At least UBS is actually the third in the leader in environmentally and sustainable investments. We have the largest portfolio in terms of that, and we've invested more and more in that because we see this trend not only in the lower generations, but on the financial impact, where it has no impact, and it's sometimes they see longer benefits and their performance in a long term is actually better when they do participate in ESG companies. So with that said, analytically and financially, we know that there is no difference. And so why not do what the next generation wants and what we're seeing people want, which is to have their investments in line with their moral values. And so when we talk about that, I think what we see, some of the biggest things is that we see clients have issues with is investments that disalign with their values, specifically when it comes to arms and gun control and bombs and materials that are used for providing and enabling other nations to create genocide or to hurt humanity. And so what we've seen is that economically, there is no difference, and so now we've seen a huge trend, and we've invested in having more products where we can be providing these products for clients. And so I'm sure if we were to talk to the average Joe here in Pasadena, if you guys have seen us here maybe for 2.5 years, talking about how we can actually make a practical change and aligning what Pasadena invests in with what the Pasadena residents want. And what we want is to invest in companies that do not align with genocide, that do not align with arming nations to implement apartheid. And one thing that's so unique here is that Pasadena was one of the first city
If you
councils.
could start to wrap it up, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, sorry. Pasadena is one of the first city councils to make that same alignment when it came to South African apartheid. And you guys were the leaders there. And we're so proud to be part of a city that did that. And so we would just hope that the same thing would occur here with the situation with regards to Palestine and the genocide portrayed by Israel. So with that, I think that the team here has
Is this a wrap up?
Yes.
Okay.
With that, I think the team here has proven more than once that economically doesn't make a difference. And then what's more important is that to align with what our constituents want, which is to be a morally balanced society that is against systems that are aligned with ICE, like Israel and like apartheid. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Evan, you had a comment?
Yeah, I appreciate that, that there is a notion that we are able, we should try to be as dispassionate and as we're not bringing our personal values into this as possible. I appreciate that sentiment and I understand where it comes from. But I also think it's impossible to do that. I don't think human beings can do anything that brings anything but who they are into a job, period. I just think that's the nature of humanity. I think we could stop bringing our own values into what we do if we stop being the people who we are, right? I think that's just a fact. So I don't find the discussion of, hey, we're going to try to remove ethics, morality, and everything from this, and we're going to really just look at fiduciary responsibility, because we do operate in an environment that's bigger than this fund. And so to that end, for me, I understand the data and the information, for example, that you just presented, that there is no harm in ESG portfolios, and it seems like that is that can be made true, right? Like we can select, we would be able to, in some way, shape, or form, select it. For me personally, when I look at what we have to do in order to achieve something like that, it's at some point, and I know I wasn't at the last meeting in May, but at some point we said, hey, well, of these three companies, how much do we have invested? And it was something like $300,000 or something. It was a very, very small amount of our portfolio. And then to say, hey, we're going to have to move 86 million or whatever the number was here in the summary in order to affect a 300,000. Like, I look at that as, and I'm an engineer by training. I went to another school, starts with a C, but it's across town here. No, CMU is amazing. You know, the engineer in me looks at that and says, hey, yeah, suboptimal, right? In terms of my personal opinion. That said, I do think that this board ought to have something, you know, some ethical and or, you know, like ESG guidelines, because it is true that I think there are red lines that if our financial advisor said, hey, look, you know, there's this really, really great company, and their whole goal is to get rid of all the trees on earth because, you know, lumber is selling for a lot of money, we would look at that and say, yeah, but, and I'm using a ridiculous example to illustrate, right, the point, that at some point we're gonna look at that and say, yeah, but is that really what's best for humanity, and is that really what we wanna do? Because they're going to strip all the, you know, or hey, they're gonna kill all of this type of animal for the meat, or whatever, right? And we would look at that and say, well, man, I think I'm gonna pause for a minute and reconsider, right? I think all of us would if it was something very extreme. And so, you know, to say that we're not going to apply any level and we're just gonna look at, you know, financial returns is, you know, you talk about the slippery slope of like, hey, now we're gonna not invest in anything, you know, except for gold or whatever. And then we find out gold's being used in, you know, the black market to fund, you know, arms or whatever. Now we're not investing in anything, and you know, Keith's just gonna put all the money under his mattress, right? Yeah. You know, so I also don't buy the slippery slope arguments, because we're here to not have those kinds of logical fallacies. We're here to split those hairs, to figure out like, okay, is this a slippery slope? And if it's a slope, how far down do we go? Because that's what life is about, right? Are these nuances, right? So I want to kind of like, I am disagreeing with you, Keith, to some degree, right? Because I also try to set my feelings aside and then look at also practicality, right? Because I think it's kind of clear the way I'm talking what I believe on the one hand, but on the other hand, like there's this engineer part of me that's like, man, 86 million, we're gonna move 86 million and cost ourselves, you know, this, you know, 0.5% or whatever, in order to affect $300,000 of our portfolio. That just seems like a really horrible idea, right? Especially from a money standpoint. But I do like Rick's suggestion of like, hey, going forward, and Harry, I think you fundamentally agreed, like going forward, we should consider some level of ethics, right?
I just want to. No, hang on. No, please.
I can do it operationally very simply.
Please. Thank you. That's okay. If Mrs. Einstein had brought us chocolate chip cookies, maybe, but.
You know, so that's my comment, is I think
Lamb,
that,
I'm sorry.
I think that we do have to understand that all of us bring our own values into this room, whether we admit it or not, right? I just feel lucky that I feel like we have a board that has people with good values, right? You know, I think if I felt like you all had values that were not good, I'd be like, well, you know, how often do you find somebody resigning from this board? You know, like, you know what I mean? So I think we believe in each other's ethics and our intentions. And so the question is from a practical standpoint, coming back to like, hey, are we really going to move 86 to affect 300,000? And I do also appreciate, you know, like, hey, this is one issue, and I think we expanded to ESG in order to comprehend all the issues and to find that balance, because I think it's clear, like at some point, you're investing in something that at some point goes into, you can invest in food, and food feeds people. And you know what? Some people do bad things. So do we stop investing in food? Of course not, right? But that's where that slippery slope argument, I think, breaks apart. And that's where we have to find, hey, look, where do we, you know, direct these resources to be invested in such a way that balances all these stakeholders' requirements. And I think that's where we need to go. Particularly as it relates to ESG, is that you can have an ESG policy that forces us to consider, and forces really, at the end of the day, future boards to consider what's best for our grandchildren. I don't have grandkids yet, but I did hit 50, so I feel like a little old now. Yeah, they're coming. So, you know, it's something that, you know, we do want to be able to explain to our grandkids. Like, hey, I was part of this board, and we tried our best to do the right things so that, you know, we didn't, you know, invest in some company, you know, that cut down all your trees, and now, you know, you're having to order oxygen, right? Like, just to use a super dystopian, like, you know, kind of like WALL-E, if you've seen that Disney movie, right? Oh, you got to see that. That's really good. I've seen it many times now. You know, so anyways, I'm kind of droning on and on at this point. I think I'm in favor of considering ESG. I'm in favor of making sure that we're, you know, executing to not just our constituents in terms of the retirees and their beneficiaries, but also the city, who, you know, they're the ones, it's by their mandate that we exist in some sense, you know, some way, shape, or form, right? Like, the public pays for, you know, our infrastructure, paid for this building to be built and all these things. So I do think we have some duty to the public. I do think we owe it first to the retirees, because that's our first, I mean, that's the whole purpose of our board, is to serve those. That's explicit in our name, in our spelled out duties and everything. But I don't think ESG is something that's bad to consider, and I think it's something that's good to consider on a go forward basis. And primarily because, like, moving 86 for 300K, that doesn't make sense to me.
So real quick,
Sorry.
I did write down one thing way earlier, and I said, you know, divestment at this point is not on the table for me, but being responsible going forward to the degree we can, accomplishing our goal is. So I think we're saying the same thing.
I think so. I caught that, by the way. So, yeah, I think we are.
So how would you suggest going forward?
I think having some level of guidance document, because ESG at the end of the day is not like an engineering exercise, right? It's not, you know, something that you have this equation and then it's like, okay, well, as long as this equation is true, it's a set of guidelines. I believe that's true of the managers as well. There's no formula, and so to the extent that we can on a going forward basis to say, hey, look, you know, as we make future decisions, we should consider the following things, and future boards, because when we do this, it beholdens, you know, our successors. Maybe your kid's gonna it'd be the fourth one.
Be the fourth one.
Yeah, that would be awesome, dude. You know, for our successors to look at us and say, all right, you know, our predecessors considered, you know, hey, look, we don't want to cut down all the trees. Hey, look, we don't want to. I mean, just as a quick example, Caltech in the 90s, I couldn't see the mountains. I literally couldn't see the mountains. My wife came from England, and 2 weeks after being at Caltech, she walked out and she saw mountains. She's like, where the heck did those come from? Literally, right? My lungs burned when I went running as a college kid. And today, every day I can see the mountains. Like, once in a while, it's hard to see the mountains, right? And so for me to sit here with that benefit that's very, very visible, to say that we shouldn't invest in ESG when the benefits to people in the region are clear, pardon the pun, I like puns, you know, like, how can we say no to that? How can we say no to cleaner air for our kids, right? Because that's what ESG is asking at the end of the day. Like, hey, can we not lose money or, you know, have a net negative effect on retirees and also promote cleaner air, promote, you know, et cetera, right? That's all.
You look like you're ready to say something, Peter.
Well, I got all sorts of things to say. But I'll start with clean air in Southern California didn't come from divestment, didn't come from ESG. It came from politicians deciding for the public good that we're going to put smog restrictions on.
Yes.
So you gotta be careful where to draw that line. Second comment I'd make, and I want to make sure everybody has the right perception on Claudia's statement. When she, I think, not to put words in your mouth, when you said we're already ESG sensitive, I think we're not, but I think what you're saying is the companies we invest in have to understand ESG as part of who they are as a corporation. This board and Cerity is not looking at our portfolio today with any ESG thought to it. So don't think we are sort of partway there. We're not. We are invested in companies who have a team thinking about the perception of ESG. Whether they do anything or not is a different story.
I don't think that's correct.
Cerity can sit here and tell you.
Yeah.
No, that's correct. We didn't hire
what you
through
told us was that-
ESG.
What you told us is that the companies that do our investments, or that we make our investments in, have ratings, and the ratings for those companies, not that just thinking about it, but their actual performance on ESG criteria. Am I misinterpreting what you
It's
said?
a little, so MSCI is one of the largest currently that will rate funds for ESG factors. And what they do is you can put forth any fund, whether it's ESG focused or not, and they will look at the holdings of that mutual fund and run that through their analytics. And they've got a ton of different analytics on every company, most every company. And based on the ratings of those holding companies, they calculate through all their algorithms one rating for that fund. It doesn't necessarily mean that that fund is looking or considering ESG factors. They could or could not. It's not their primary philosophy. Their primary philosophy is really their strategy. So for example, large cap growth, they're looking at the universe of large cap managers, and from there they're picking growth managers what they feel is a portfolio of companies that will perform the best out of full market cycle. How they get to that portfolio, there's a ton of different ways they can look at it. Some of them may be ESG related, but that doesn't mean they're an ESG focused fund. It just, the fallout out of it happens to be rated single A by MSCI because of the holdings they have.
That's helpful, and I appreciate that, because I didn't fully understand all the nuances, and I'm not sure that, I think the nuances are more complex than either one of us have characterized.
And the other thing to remember is we don't have individual stocks today. We may have way back when, and we have slowly, because we've gotten smaller, and Cerity has driven us to be cognizant of cost. We, for the right reasons, have moved to mutual funds and ETFs. And frankly, we call up Dodge & Cox and say, we don't want to own Caterpillar. They're going to say, thank you very much, right? And so we have to remember that. The other comment I would make is if you pull up page 103, right, in today's deck that talks about ESG pillars, what worries me about this conversation about what ESG looks like is if we poll, am I on 103? Okay. If you poll everybody in the room, including everybody on this board, you're going to judge all of these, and I can't even count, there are probably 50 or 60 items here. Some are going to be more important to you than others. And this is why I worry about the next generation of what the board wants. You're right. I have issues on here that I could not care less about. There's some that I'm very passionate about. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. And so while the impassioned group here today is worried about things that go boom and tractors that, all these things that are really valuable things to think about, how are we supposed to, as a board, managing mutual funds, decide whether this basket of stocks in this mutual fund, how they lay out here? I think it is a very difficult conversation to have. I, as a money manager, and those in the room who have individual clients, can have an individual conversation with an individual client and say, this is important to me. And I have clients that don't want to own pharmaceuticals. I have clients that don't like cosmetic companies. I have clients that don't like tobacco. And the list goes on, and I have the ability to do that. But it's very hard in a mutual fund world to actually get good data and be able to react to it on a daily basis. And in fact, one of the interesting facts is if you look at the sort of portfolio that Cerity proposed as an example, it doesn't even get rid of Caterpillar, right? Which is the reason we started this process. And so you can do everything you want, buy an ESG portfolio, and still not have the impact that you might want to have. If we want to get to a conclusion, if we want to use ESG as another factor we consider going forward, I could live with that because it's one factor. I don't want to start with ESG as our starting point and then consider after that. But if we want to consider it as one of the other things we consider in the process of evaluating managers, I think that's something I could live with. But realize that we may find someone who's great on carbon emissions, but it's terrible on pay issues. And what are we gonna do about that? It's just a hard situation.
And that's the balance that I'm talking about, because I don't think you can avoid all issues. There's no such, I mean, I gave the food example, right? Like, food is used to feed bad people. Okay, so are we divesting it from food? No, of course not. That'd be stupid. Am I allowed to say that in this room? Sure.
Well, or a company who has had a strike.
Stupid things have been
implies they
said
have
in
a
this
wage-
room.
A company that says strike implies they've had a wage issue. So is that, to the point Mr. Cole said, is the point about getting every single dollar out of labor?
Right.
Right? Does that mean we can't own industrial companies? I mean, how far do you take that is really hard to actually come up with.
That's why I said it should be a set of guidelines, right, for the future. Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, go ahead, Mr.
I'm sorry. I
No, go
didn't-
ahead, go ahead.
Two things, and one is separate from the second. I think we've been privileged to have a remarkably thoughtful conversation, and I appreciate, as many of you have said, the intelligence and conscientiousness that everybody brings to this conversation, and particularly you, Mr. Chairman. I was not surprised by your comments, but it's not because I think you're not thinking about them. It's because I think you're consistent with your values. You spent decades on the streets of Pasadena, and a few years in offices, not bringing your personal values and trying as objectively as possible to uphold the laws. And I think that's core to who you are. And to Evan's point, that's what you bring to this body. And I value it, I respect it, and I want to say that publicly. It's easy for me to say it privately, just like you say that it's easy for the city not to invest in those things. Actually, we have corporate bonds. We do not have corporate stocks, but we have corporate bonds. So we could invest in companies that would violate the conditions. So happens we haven't, but it is not an impossibility. The point I want to make is I think I hear something that I'm very comfortable with from a majority, which is finding a way to strike a balance. The world is not black and white, even though some issues, and I believe South Africa was one of them, are black and white. But even there, reasonable people disagreed. But I think that going forward, figuring out what that looks like, I think is complex. And that's where both the engineer and the investment advisor bring to us the practical challenges. And I recognize them. I've spent my whole career trying to balance those in a public arena. That's democracy. It is the worst form of government ever invented, except for all the others. And so we are part of that. And so I would like to charge us as the subcommittee to think about this and see whether there is something in writing or whether we simply want to have it as one factor. I agree it should not be black and white, but I think that I've heard from at least a majority of my colleagues that some form of ESG consideration should be considered as part of our ongoing investment strategy.
Being the new kid on the block, I do think it's not, I absolutely concur with what you say. I think there's a reasonable resolution. I don't think we're going to get it on one side or the other. But I do think we do need to bring this to a close at some point. I don't think this can be open-ended. You know, this is just me personally talking. I don't know that if we're here a year from now talking about the same things, we'll get to a different conclusion. So, you know, in talking with the chair, or in agreeing with what the chair said, I do think we need to move forward with something, some type of a motion. I don't think we're going to do it today. I could be wrong. I'm not the chair. But yeah, this has to be resolved at some point. Thank you.
I have a quick question for council. I don't think we need to wait for a letter from the city. And in fact, personally, that's fine. We can receive and file, acknowledge we got it, because I actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have responsibility, this board has responsibility for all the investments in the portfolio. And if the city could come, they are a comment, right? They're not a, right? We can do what we want from an investment perspective.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. And then I guess my question is beyond that, sort of how we formalize this. I suppose options are change the investment policy to have some sort of recognition of ESG as being a factor, or is it part of a, we make it part of a search criteria, so we put it in the search language, but sort of leave it out of the investment policy? I think that's something you and I could explore if that's the direction the board wants us to go in. I wouldn't want it to be the factor tail that wags the dog, but I do want, I think it belongs to have some part of the conversation.
In following that, I have a question. You know, the funds that are quote unquote, hey, we're an ESG, they sell themselves as an ESG fund. How much does that tail wag the dog there? Or is that just something where, you know, you see where I'm going with this?
That's
I don't.
the point, it's hard, right?
Right.
The fact that this group out here would say Caterpillar should be part of no ESG, and they have their arguments. But it is, because they're in the portfolios, both on the bond side and the stock side, in the sample or the represented portfolio that Sarah put together.
Right.
So that's and then you get back to materiality, right? So that portfolio has a little over 100,000 where we have 300,000 a day. So by doing all that shift, we move it $200,000.
Right.
And so there's a materiality thing. And then there's what does ESG look like? And it's all, in my mind, it's in the eyes of the beholder. Because the same Caterpillar tractor that runs over people in Gaza creates fire breaks in the hills of Altadena, right? And protects wildland firefighters, right? So where does that lay? It's interpretation.
It's hard, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
anything else? I would like to finalize this and put it to bed, if at all possible. But let me just ask a question, Claudio and/or Annie. When you get the ESG scores on certain, let's pick an ETF like Vanguard, do you get that through MSCI?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, on a moving forward basis, and again, agreeing with we don't want the tail wagging the dog here, whenever we ask you to do a search for an investment in whatever, you know, we ask you to do, it seems like it's pretty easy to say, when you get the companies that you recommend, and you typically come to us with 3 to 5 companies, and you list their strengths and their weaknesses, could one of those criteria just be including what their MSCI ESG score is?
Of course, yes.
And that seems like it would give us the opportunity to pick who we want. We would know their scores, because we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to pick who we want based on your recommendation. Now we're just getting the information on what their ESG score is. I can live with that, but I would like to put this to bed today. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on it over the course of the last year or two. And again, I value your input and stuff like that, but is anybody not okay with that?
I actually appreciate the effort to find common ground, and I think that I can find common ground with that. It's probably easier to do that than it is to come up with language that would be really helpful in guiding us. So as a start, I think that's a reasonable start. So I will move, not that we need a motion, but just so it's clear. I will move that we, in the future, when considering investments for our portfolio, that the ESG ratings for those choices be disclosed and be a factor in our consideration.
I'm not sure I like, I'm not sure I like the formalization of it being a factor.
I suspect that you wouldn't. I think that it could be a factor of 0 to you. It could be a factor of a lot to me. But that
Well, then
it
that would
is-
just happen organically, right? I mean, why does that have to be in writing? Because the way you said it makes it sound like
Well, Keith,
we have to consider
isn't
that.
their performance, isn't their cost, isn't their manager tenure, all the other things we
Yes.
consider, are they not also factors?
Yes?
I don't mind the word factor, as long as it's not a filter. Filter, I would object to. Factor, I'm okay with, because it's just one more element to consider.
I agree with that. Because we already stipulate other factors.
Then I'll drop it. Okay. No, it's okay.
That was that.
I may not want $100 million under my mattress, but I can count this high. Okay.
It's very gracious of you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciated. So that's my motion if there's a second.
I will second that motion.
Okay, take roll on this, please, Jill.
So we have Member Sang,
Yes.
Member Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
I said yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Krusberg,
Yes.
Vice Chair Boyle,
Yes.
and Chair Jones.
Yes.
The only comment I'd like to make to the public is whether this is in line with what you had anticipated or not, you truly brought something to us that we didn't know about before. It is a factor now, and it wasn't before all this started. So for that, I feel, again, that you brought something we didn't know about, and it is a factor now. Again, it may not be 100% of what you want, but it's a portion. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the action items, or continuing with the action items, going back to number 11, review and approve revised arrangement letter for auditing services and required communication for the June 30, 2026 eval.
Yes, briefly. This was pulled from the agenda in May, and the reason why it was pulled is because the letter did have some significant differences between previous year's letters, although not material to the actual work effort of the audit. Council caught those differences. They really centered on preserving system control over data, confidentiality of system information, and I think also clearly articulating consistency between the terms of the agreement with MGO and the arrangement letter itself, and having the service contract with MGO be the controlling factor there. So this is just brought back before you. It's now been revised or reviewed and revised by council. And on the side, we have been continuing with our work efforts, the initial stages of the audit while this has been going. So it hasn't held us back. Just a last thing to point out is that there is also required supplemental information that's included in the agenda report that's always provided to the board from the auditor. And that really talks about communication that we need to have, our shared responsibilities between MGO and staff, what the planning process looks like, and kind of the concept of materiality. So when they bring something, when they identify something that is of concern and looking at our financial statements, they're also looking at materiality with that. And the price for the audit this year will be $56,758, which was included in your adopted budget. There's no change there.
Any questions from the board?
None. I just have a comment. I hope you will let MGO know that I don't think that's the best business practice to try to make material changes in their contracts without telling people. I think it shouldn't have been our responsibility to note changes in their contracts. As a partner, they could have come to us and said, this contract is materially different for these reasons, and this is why. It just, to me, it's not I don't love that.
I 100% agree with you there.
Okay, I
But-
will.
But if you had other information you wanted, I would love to.
Well, I would just add to that, I think part of the reason why this arrangement letter was different and why council caught some of those differences is because we rotated engagement teams. So we have a whole new partner and we have new senior auditors. So we did that as a result of the conversation that we had with the board back in March, where we discussed long-term, all of your professional services providers. We'd been with MGO for quite a while. We'd been with this team for 3 years. And we felt if we wanted to keep them for the subsequent 2 additional 1 years, it made sense to rotate the partners. So I think it was because a new team
Well,
came
then,
on too.
then a different objection, bad handoff.
Bad handoff. Noted, 100%.
Agree. And they're the same company, right? Like, it's one thing to say, hey, we went from MGO to somebody else and the handoff wasn't, something was missing, but from one partner to another,
I agree.
I'm a service provider for a living and not acceptable, for my clients.
Is there a motion then to approve the revised arrangement letter with System Auditor Macias, Ginny, and O'Connell for the June 30th financial audit?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion
Aye.
carries. Thank you. Item number 12.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jill.
So just briefly, this is before you to authorize Lindsay's attendance at a virtual calipers training for administrative assistants.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
So ordered.
Is that right?
Thank you.
Wait, okay, I'll listen to that. Thank you.
You want to get the England-Argentina soccer game?
No, I do have lunch with my pastor coming up.
Yeah, okay.
The England-Argentina game has started 10 minutes ago.
Yes, it has.
Lisa, I hope it's not a confessional for how the meeting went.
No,
Ouch.
no pressure, Claudia. Investment reports, item A.
Yes, okay, so the next page starts the performance, and just as a reminder, this is a monthly report, so it's very preliminary, so it just gives a very kind of cursory view of what's to come. We'll have the more complete version at the next meeting with the quarterly. So overall, the fund did, kept pretty closely to the policy index. It outperformed it by about 10 basis points, but again, that is without a few of the areas that were not available yet for the June performance. So just a quick thing, domestic equity, I do want to highlight that Atlanta Capital looks like it's coming out of its slump. I'm not going to say it is out of its slump, but it's going in the right direction. Small caps in general did better than large cap in June, and you'll see that in your portfolio. International equity outperformed its benchmarks. Domestic fixed income, or your whole fixed income portfolio, kept in line with the aggregate. Again, this is without the bank loan fund because they take a little bit longer for their valuations. And then the next page just shows a bunch of NAs for both real estate and the hedge fund. Again, those are delayed, so performance, not too bad. The next page, everything is in line, everything's within range, so governance perspective, all good. Next page, so with pooled cash, the total assets at the end of June came to a little over 104 million, 104.7 million.
And just an important note, I think, so to put in the minutes, the preliminary fiscal year-to-date return, because this is the end of your fiscal year, is looking at 8.9%, but we do expect that to change a bit once we get all those final numbers in, hopefully to the positive. Yep.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion then to receive and file the June 2026 fiscal year-to-date performance update?
So move.
Second.
So ordered. Transaction summary?
Okay, so 800,000 was the amount that we raised for pooled cash in June. It came out of those 3 international or equity funds with some of the out of the Vanguard short-term investment grade. And then other transactions since we last spoke, we did get a redemption amount from Invesco, a little over almost 110,000. So puts your total value of Invesco still to be redeemed at just under 7 million.
Okay. Questions, comments? Is there a motion to receive and file the transaction summary?
So moved.
Second.
So ordered. Real asset outlook.
Okay, so we do this annually. It just gives a good snapshot of where our team is thinking about all the components of the real asset sector. For your purposes, really the only thing that we're looking at is the core real estate. It is still neutral, but this again is increase in rating from, it was underweight or negative just a couple of years ago. So that's one of the reasons, just as a reminder, why we elected to bring the allocation back up to target, and we added American Realty to diversify the real estate composite. Invesco is being redeemed, and ARA will eventually become the sole real estate manager unless we decide that there is another complement that we can insert. Just a note on Invesco, they had that, amended contract that was up, and we recommended that we don't approve it. Apparently that was in the minority. It did get approved. So what that means for you, it's a little bit of a non-starter, but the big points as far as impact is the priority. They do have a priority lane, and it was for small investors. So if you were redeeming $1 million before, you would get pushed up to the front, and you'd get that out before others that had a larger amount. That's been moved up to 5 million. So it actually turns out it's good for you because you're just under 7 million. So as they redeem and you get to that 5 million, you'll get pushed up to the front. So that's actually a good thing. It doesn't have to come all the way down $1 million. And then just a note on fees. Obviously, you're still paying fees while you're in the fund. But the other good thing is the fees can be changed at any time by the GPs, but not if you're in a redemption. So your fees are protected at the level they're at. So it turned out to be positive or neutral impact on
And
that.
let me guess,
So
their fees are going up, not down.
potentially,
Okay.
who knows?
Do we get the benefit if they lower their fees?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Just curious.
We'd push for that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
We
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
conversations with
Yeah,
them.
I think,
We have other clients clearly in the fund, so we do have a little bit of leverage on that respect.
questions, comments?
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no.
not to mix conversations, but I notice under value-add real estate, forced sellers drive much of an opportunity set. That sounds great from the buyer's perspective, but any thought about pausing Invesco so that we're not a forced seller?
So, Invesco is an ongoing concern. So they're not liquidating their entire fund. So they're not going to be a forced seller from that standpoint. They're going to be, as they're doing their transactions, and we've seen increased transactions across the sector and core. So, hoping that's a good thing for everybody. So those transactions, as a normal course of their management, will raise cash to pay out their redemption. So we wouldn't consider
So
Invesco a forced seller.
They're not having to sell because they've got a redemption pending. They basically say, if we happen to come up with cash, we'll redeem you. If we
Yeah.
don't, we're not.
Well, where it hurts
Which is
them-
fine,
Yeah,
right?
where it hurts them is it kind of hinders them into purchasing opportunities because they have to make a decision on how to, they've got this cash. Some of it's going to go to opportunities, but other has to go to satisfying the redemptions.
Okay.
And the avoidance of forced sales is the whole reason these queues
Yes,
exist.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion then to receive and file the real asset outlook?
So moved.
So ordered. Item D.
Okay, a couple things that need to be approved. So the first one will be for The July and August pooled cash is 975,000 each month for a total of 1.95. So this first page shows what July could be. Again, just as a reminder, you know the markets have been changing, so this is a snapshot as of July 6th. When we do the actual pooled cash recommendation at the end of the month, it could look different. But right now, we anticipate taking most of it from equities, because that is the most overweight, but still maintaining an overweight in equities and a little bit of an underweight in fixed income. And then if you turn to the second page, this is if we took, we took the amounts from July and August and put them all together, this is what it would look like. Again, that could change. The one different thing on here is we talked about moving, rebalancing from the hedge fund that's done well, so it's quite overweight, it's a little over 1% overweight, and taking that and funding it into American Realty, which is the real estate, which is quite underweight. We have to do that quite in advance. For magnitude, requires 65 days, and so the next deadline or due date to request this is July 27th. Excuse me. So that's why you see there money coming out of magnitude of $1 million and going into the ARA core property fund. So those are the two things that will need to be. Also, we have a small amount coming out of Aristotle, and that's pretty flexible. So those, I guess, three things to approve. One, the pooled cash amount of $975,000 each month, the rebalance from $1 million from magnitude into ARA, and the small $150,000 coming out of the bank loans that also needs a heads up.
Okay, Isabel, we've got that broken down into two different things. Can we just, two different items?
Oh, yeah, sorry, the one
D
agenda
and E.
item, the rebalance was a different agenda items. I can,
Well, let's just do it like this. Is there a motion, first of all, to approve the rebalance?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Okay. In terms of like the percentages, you're moving from hedge over to real estate. And I guess my question there is that move primarily in order to be on target with the proportion?
yeah, to get it closer to target.
What's the earnings impact? I mean, there's a range, right? Like we have these targets, but the targets are only meaningful in the sense that, hey, we believe that this spread of risk is what we want to do. But then we give you the range in order to, within, those boundaries, make more money. And so what do you think the impact is moving $1 million from one, category to another? And should we really be doing it based on that?
So we look to our research teams, right, to kind of guide us on where they drill down a little bit more. So if you remember, the real asset outlook showed that the core real estate section is now a neutral for our team, meaning that they would keep it at target. So there's three areas you could be negative, which means you can keep it underweight, which naturally it was underweight just because of the valuations that we've seen over the past couple of years. It can be neutral, which means, around target, doesn't have to be exactly at target at all times. It's going to vacillate a little bit. And then positive, which means overweight that. So core real estate is at neutral or target, and you're quite under that target. So that's why we're attempting to bring it back to that target. It'll still be under, actually, even with this rebalance. And, we hope to move some of that from Invesco into ARA, and then, as things work out, we'll see where it leads it, but go ahead.
If I could just answer the question a little bit more simplistically. There has been a lot of studies done regarding rebalancing and the positive benefits to that and having good rebalancing policies in place. And so without other driving factors that would cause us to recommend holding an overweight or an underweight, which we have done in the equity space and the fixed income space, right? Our research team has come out and said, let's let's hold a little bit of an overweight to equities, a little bit of an underweight to credit and fixed income. And we've taken that into account into our rebalancing recommendations. With regards to these other asset classes where we don't have those views, having a strict rebalancing process in place adds value over time. If you were to look back at the preliminary June report, you would see over the last year that your hedge fund allocation, your magnitude, has delivered double digits, 13.7% over the last year. Real estate is much less than that, right? The low single digits. And so effectively what we are doing is the basics of investing, is selling high and buying low.
I like that answer a lot. Thank you. Sorry, sorry for
No, that's
implying that I
okay.
didn't like your answer. That was not my
No,
intention.
no, no.
But
That's
thank
why
you.
we're both here.
Thank you.
Anything
That's
else?
why we're a team, yes.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Good, it passes. Okay, and you already talked about the hedge fund, right? About taking $1 million out?
Yes.
What was the third aspect? Because I don't see a third aspect on here.
Oh, it's Aristotle, the bank loan also requires a little advance notice, not as much. And so we'll need that for more liquidity, and that's where some of the liquidity is coming from
Okay.
for August.
We just moved to approve all of them though, right? I thought.
No, we have to take them individually.
Oh, never
Yeah.
mind.
So is there a motion to approve then as discussed?
So moved.
Second.
Did you also need an
So
approval
ordered.
for the
Thank you very
actual
much.
amounts?
Thank you very much. Appreciate
okay.
it. Staff report?
Sure. Just wanted to let you know the COLA will be applied to the payees this month. So the net effect of that is just around $28,000 per month additional that our payroll goes up for COLA.
And that goes for our board compensation as well, right?
100% to the
Thanks.
board, yeah.
You get 3% more.
Go into deferred compensation plan.
Yeah, you're 529 for sure. So I think just wanted to let you know about that. And that would be assuming no deaths, our payroll for the year, which is not going to happen, our payroll would be going up by a little over $300,000. That's the gross effect from that COLA adjustment. That was a 3% COLA. Our annual confirmations have all come in. We've just got one guy missing and we've been in contact with him, which is great. Paying the fiduciary liability policy insurance today, tomorrow. The valuation, all the liabilities are going to the actuary by the end of this week. And then once the assets are finalized and we get final custodial statements, we can prepare the assets to send to him. So we're anticipating having the valuation to you all in October as planned. Audit work is continuing, and we're also on track to present your final financial statements in audit in November. I wanted to remind the board that we have no meeting in August. You will get a board update with the outcome from some of the transactions that we've just discussed and anything else that's going on. And I wanted to let you know that I will not be here at the September meeting. I'm celebrating my 30th anniversary with my husband. We made it, woohoo!
So far.
So far, I know, counting the days,
Anything could
right?
happen.
But the September board meeting should be fairly mundane. We will have 2 supported IDR hearings. There'll be a very large destruction inventory that Lindsay's going to provide for you. And our plan is to do that once per year to not overburden the board with administrative stuff. And then Sarity's items, I think, are fairly straightforward with the second quarter IPR, the rebalance, and the annual closed plan review. Moving to the budget, I think just what I would want to point out is that the numbers presented in the item are basically our final numbers. There's just still a couple of tiny numbers that are not finally in. But where we'll end the year with is on the payroll. I thought we were going to be quite a bit over. I think because we moved Lindsay to 50% time, that definitely earned us some savings. So we're only over on our payroll by $5,400 for the year. Conversely, with retiree payroll, we're under by $176,000. So if you come down to our year-end, June 30th, administration is $511,000, almost $512,000, which is around $10,000 less than what we had expected to pay for the year. And our total FPRS operating expenses
are a little over 12 million, which is around $186,000 less than what we had originally budgeted.
Mr. Chairman, God calls.
Go.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
done too.
Thank you very much. Counsel, Isabel? Thank you. Nothing? Thank you. Comments from the board? Motion to adjourn? So ordered.
Second.
Thank you.
Who did it?